According to a report from ABC News today, quote, at least 7 people associated with longtime Trump friend Roger Stone have been contacted by special counsel Robert Mueller, though Stone has denied colluding with Russians. Joining me now, Ken Delaney, a national security reporter for NBC News. Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro sits on the House Intelligence Committee. David French is a senior writer at the National Review, and Caroline Polisi, a criminal defense attorney. Ken, let me start with you. Just in trying to sift through everything that is in this indictment, we singled it out there. This line here, and I want you to translate because that wording is a little confusing in this indictment. Domain hosted by a third-party provider, used by Clinton's personal office. The way this is being interpreted by the folks I'm reading is saying that's the day Trump said, hey, Russia, I hope you go find those 30,000 emails from Hillary Clinton. Remember, these ones supposedly scrubbed from her server. And that language I just read is a reference to Russia trying to do just that. Is that what it's saying there?
That's what it sure looks like, Steve. And you know what? I don't think it's an accident that this date was mentioned in this indictment. There are a lot of dates that things happen where the Russian hackers were active. And they didn't list very many of them, but this is one particular date they listed, and I think Mueller did it for a reason, because he knows that we would make this connection. He's not alleging that these Russian actors did this because Donald Trump asked them to, but I think a reasonable person can make that inference, and it's really extraordinary, because if you remember, Katie Tur, our own Katie Tur, gave Donald Trump a chance after he said that to sort of take it back, or to at least say he's kidding, he's engaging in hyperbole. But he embraced it. He said, absolutely, I would like the Russians to, if they can get these emails, that would be great, or the Chinese, he said. And in fact, you know, the idea that they morphed from trying to hack the DNC and the DCCC to trying to hack Hillary Clinton and her people, and they continue to do that, I think looms very significant in this investigation, Steve.
Okay, now, no Americans indicted here, saying that there's no allegation in this indictment that the Americans knew, that mentioned here, knew they were talking to Russian agents, but the speculation now is centering around Roger Stone. Take us through what is in here about Roger Stone, and do we have any sense what the next steps are there, if there are any?
Right. Well, so we've known for some time that the special counsel is calling Roger Stone's friends to the grand jury and asking questions about his knowledge. And the text, or the messages that were enumerated in this indictment today, the indictment, as you said, does not mention Roger Stone, but he had previously published this exchange that he had with Guccifer II. And at the time he published it, he said, I've never had any contact with a Russian intelligence official, because he doesn't believe, or at the time was contending, that Guccifer II was not a Russian intelligence operative. But this indictment makes it clear that that persona is a fake persona created by Russian intelligence to leak the stolen emails. And so now we have Roger Stone in contact with this persona. There's nothing particularly incriminating that laid out in this indictment that Stone did or said, but it certainly refutes his denial that he engaged with the Russians. And we also know, you know, separately, a couple of months ago, another story broke that he said he remembered that he had contact with a Russian down in Florida who was offering him incriminating information about Hillary Clinton. So if there is a nexus, if there were members of the Trump campaign or Trump advisors who were participating with the Russians and coordinating, Roger Stone seems like a likely person that investigators would be focusing on. Again, no evidence yet, but that's where everybody's looking right now, Steve.
Okay, now the immediate next thing on the world stage, the next issue on the world stage coming out of this is, of course, that President Trump is set to meet with Vladimir Putin. There's been some calls from Democrats tonight, and I think John McCain even potentially for Trump not to go forward with that meeting. The White House now saying he will. So, Congressman Castro, with that in mind, with the White House saying this meeting is going forward, with this indictment now detailing what Robert Mueller and his team believe is this is what Russia was doing in the United States in this presidential election in 2016. What message do you want President Trump to bring to Vladimir Putin? What message do you expect him to bring to Vladimir Putin?
Well, given the news today and the indictments, President Trump should not go bow at the foot of Vladimir Putin. And for him to do so is a disgrace to the American people, most especially because on the very day when he publicly called for Russia to hack into Hillary Clinton's emails, they actually listened to him, and they did that. So for him to go there knowing what all of us know now would be a disgrace.
Caroline, from a lawyer's perspective here, Ken is saying he thinks that line we're talking about, the day that Trump says, go get those Hillary emails, Russia, if you're listening, this line in the indictment saying it looks like something like that happened that night for the first time. Do you believe that's something Mueller put in there intentionally? And from a prosecutor standpoint, what does he want us saying if he's putting it out there for us to see and notice?
Right. I do definitely think he put that in there intentionally. There's an old saying, and people have been saying it all day today, that prosecutors do not believe in coincidences. So wouldn't it be quite a big coincidence that, unbeknownst to President Trump or then candidate Trump, Guccifer 2.0 and these Russian operatives started the spear phishing campaign on the exact day that President Trump, then candidate Trump, told them to do so. So I do think that there's more to this story. In the bigger picture here, this is just part 2 of a 3-part series. I think the third part here is what, if anything, did Americans know? Now, Rod Rosenstein was very clear not to go that far in a statement today, that, nobody's alleging thus far that any Americans knew, but I think that's, logically speaking, the next shoe to drop.
And we mentioned that upcoming Trump meeting with Vladimir Putin. Again, the White House saying it's still on, and you could make the argument that today's indictment would give the president the evidence he needs to go into that meeting and hold Vladimir Putin to account for Russian interference in the campaign. Well, in advance of that meeting, Trump suggested he does not plan to confront Putin very strongly. This is what he had to say earlier today.
I know you'll ask, will we be talking about meddling? And I will absolutely bring that up. I don't think you'll have any, gee, I did it, you got me. There won't be a Perry Mason here, I don't think, but you never know what happens, right? But I will absolutely, firmly ask the question.
Putin, of course, has consistently denied that there's any proof that Russia was responsible for the interference campaign. This is what he told Megyn Kelly last year.
President Putin, you have repeatedly and passionately denied that Russia was behind the interference with our American presidential election.
I haven't seen even once any direct proof of Russian interference in the presidential election in the United States.
And now Washington Post columnist David Ignatius is issuing an ominous warning ahead of Monday's meeting. Trump's concessions to Russia and his apparent inability to hold Putin accountable prompted Ignatius to write that Trump should consider the possibility that Helsinki could someday become a symbolic name for appeasement like Munich in 1938. Quote, improving relations with Russia is a worthy goal so long as it doesn't undermine security or reward bad behavior. David Ignatius there. David French, let me bring you in. I read you have a new piece up on National Review saying the witches are real. The president has been calling this Mueller investigation a witch hunt. You're certainly taking it seriously. But let me ask you this, because we talk so much about, the president's been making the case to his supporters that, hey, this is my enemies. This is the Democrats. These are the Clinton diehards who just don't want to respect what happened in 2016. Do you see anything in this indictment today, in the news, in the coverage of it, that's going to change how this has sort of percolated on the right?
Well, certainly not in the hardcore Trump base, because immediately the response was, well, yet again, we see no collusion, even though there were very interesting paragraphs in the indictment indicating that there was direct communication with unnamed individuals with Guccifer 2.0, which broadcasts that there are more shoes left to drop. But until you see some evidence that says that is screaming collusion, you're going to have a hardcore base that is going to be unfazed by any of this. But I do think you had a lot of thoughtful conservatives out there who said, and it is becoming clearer and clearer that the intelligence agency's assessment that the Putin regime tried to intervene, what was first a disruption operation, became an operation on attempting to hurt Hillary Clinton and help Donald Trump. It is increasingly clear, abundantly clear, that Mueller needs to be free to do his work and let the chips fall where they may. And I think one thing that's very key, because he focused on the actual Russian interference in our election here, he illustrated that he's doing his work competently and professionally and according to the core terms of his appointment. And that's a very important thing.
And Congressman Castro, I'm just curious, have you had a chance to talk to any of your Republican colleagues? Have you heard from them at all? Have you felt the temperature change there at all in response to this?
I haven't, Steve. We ended voting somewhere around 11 o'clock this morning, and most of us have been on planes. I just got back home to Texas about an hour ago. But in addition to the indictments and the fact that the president should cancel this summit, it also speaks to the need for two very important things. First, greater election security. There isn't a single federal law, and I don't think there's a state law, at least nobody's been able to point to one, that says that sets any bar or minimum bar for cybersecurity protection for our voting systems. And we know that the Russians hacked into 20-something states' voter registration systems. So there's got to be laws that are put into place and greater cooperation among all levels of government. The second part is that we've got to have the equivalent of a cyber NATO, where nations come together and are able to act defensively when one of them is attacked. NATO accomplishes that when a country is physically intruded upon, but what's missing is that cyber component.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.